just don't try to compete, don't discount, don't get involved in the race to the bottom, especially as, times get tough. Like at the moment, the economy is a little bit difficult, but hey, the people that buy my product are still doing well. They're still going on the overseas trips where they want to come in and buy some Sleepy Merino so they can travel in it. You've got to be brave to do it, but it's actually worthwhile. Setting up your niche, getting a point of difference, and working on the quality that you require to be in that little niche.
Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of Biz Bites, proudly brought to you by 𝗦𝗹𝗲𝗼𝗍𝗲, the people behind podcasts done for you, because we're all about exposing other people's brilliance. Don't forget to subscribe to Biz Bites and check out podcasts done for you as well in the show notes. Now, let's get into it. Well, hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of Biz Bites. And the guest that's joining me today has quite a journey to share, and I think it's going to be very impactful for people to hear about it. There's a lot about, businesses that working from the farm to starting to go on a much larger scale outside of the farm. And there's a lot of transition. There's a lot of learnings, I think, for business owners everywhere to get from this episode. I've known my guest for a little while, but we haven't had a deep conversation for some time. So I'm really looking forward to this. So, Julie, welcome to the program.
Thanks, Anthony. Lovely to be here.
And just to kick things off, as I like to do you want to explain who you are and what your business is?
Julie Bird, I'm from Sleepy Merino. What we do is manufacture merino sleep and loungewear here in Australia for both men and women, and it's been quite a journey.
Yes, I imagine it has been. So I guess where's the starting point that we kick things off on? Because where did it begin? Where did this little venture begin?
Well, it really began right back in the beginning. I always wanted to go farming. It was just in my blood. I think it's, multi-generations of my family have been in grazing. And we didn't have a farm. We were living in Sydney. My parents lived in Sydney as I grew up. I went off to ag college, and I've been in the agriculture space, in R&D, both in rural areas as well as in Canberra, coordinating research for agriculture. Worked and finally went and bought my property that I've been dreaming about forever, along with my parents and my brother. So a family pastoral company. So we moved up to 𝗰𝗶𝗿𝗶𝗶𝗍𝗶, which is in the northern tablelands of New South Wales, in 2017, late 2017, and put a lot of money in and put some stock on there, bought lots of sheep, a few cows, living the dream, and then the worst drought in living memory hit, which was just lovely.
That's what everyone wanted.
Such timing, and oh my God, it was awful. I won't go into it, but in a way, I should be thankful to the drought because it got me to think outside the square. And that's why Sleepy Merino was born. I was aware that there had been research from my past experience in R&D, that there was research by CSIRO and Sydney Uni that it actually helps you to get to sleep and stay asleep if you are in wool. So both in wool bedding but also wool clothing. So I had been for many years wearing thermals as pyjamas, but they weren't particularly comfortable. They're tight and clingy and usually a long sleeve. And I've just sort of been toying with this idea of actually designing something that was actually comfortable. I was also aware that due to my time in life that, the hot and cold flushes of women at a certain age, it's really hard to sleep. And merino is the best fabric for them. It actually wicks the heat and sweat away from your skin, and then the next minute can warm you. And it's actually, as I found, it's helping both men and women. We all have trouble with the hot and cold thing as we sleep. So I set about designing a range of pyjamas made out of pure merino, thinking it was going to be relatively easy. I laugh now. There's so much I've learned, but it's been quite a journey. I had never designed garments, it was something totally new to me. Set up the website, I was intending to just sell online. I found eventually there's a lot of research and speaking to people, especially when you're in a regional area, you don't have the contacts necessarily or the networks, and especially in a whole new industry like the fashion industry. I had to find where I could get these made. I designed them. They were pretty rough on a piece of paper, but, they had to then be made into patterns and all the whole thing. So, there was a lot of work. I did get a lot of support from the wool industry, Australian Wool Innovation, in helping me find the right contacts and factories here in Australia. It was always going to be Australian production. I'm glad I made the effort to do that because it's been a point of difference. There's a lot of imported product that isn't as good. Both our wool and very similar wool goes into the products. So it's hopefully next year it'll be just our wool, but it's a far superior product to the imported mass-produced merino. It's a longer fibre. It's much softer feel. And I had much more control over the fabric itself. We only use organic dyes. It's pre-shrunk before it's sewn. It's been a bit of a process, and I've used the wrong factories. I've actually even tried to help a regional small factory, but they just couldn't keep up with the numbers or the quality that I required. So there's been a lot of mistakes made. I've learned a hell of a lot.
I bet. Well, there's so much to unpack there, and we're going to get to it. But I just want to get one little question out of the way, because the focus is really today about the business journey and everything along that, and there's a lot to share around that. But just to pick up on your point, the actual sleepwear that you're producing now, men and women, all ages, and equally good in summer as it is in winter?
Absolutely. And it's been a little bit of a trial. Before I even sold any, I got various weights of fabric and gave it to all my friends and family. I got them to wear it. And I found the perfect weight that will both cool you as well as warm you is 170 GSM of weight. And it's also very good for traveling or hiking or anything like that for that reason, because you'll go from hot to cold. And if you wear it next to your skin, it will do that. It will thermoregulate. And there's just so many advantages to us as humans if that can happen. It's also recently been found, with stop-go sports like cycling, that you use less energy because your fabric, the wool fabric's actually doing that thermoregulating for you compared to a synthetic garment. So, it's a wonderful natural product. You couldn't invent something better than what the sheep have given us.
Amazing. And we'll include lots of details in the show notes how everyone can make the purchase of this. And as someone who has struggled with sleep, I definitely will be following those links myself a little bit later on. There's a lot to unpack as far as the business journey is concerned. And I guess let's start back at the beginning. That idea of purchasing a farm, that's a big decision, even if it is in your blood. And I guess, as you said, you learnt the hard way with the drought hitting immediately afterwards. Did you go in with eyes wide open in the beginning? Did you know, did you really think droughts and floods and all of those weather conditions were potentially going to impact you, or was it just more fixated on the fact that I finally got the farm and it's going to be all happy days?
I had some background as an agricultural extension officer way back in the day, and as an agronomist, so I wasn't going into it blind. And at the time, if you had average conditions, which never happens in farming, all the numbers added up. I got the right property. I did a big spreadsheet, being me, of, cow areas and sheep areas and profitability, and everything added up. But, since we've bought it, we've had not only the worst drought, we've had the mouse plague, which was awful. It was the worst of all of them. We've had floods. We've had damage from a lot of flooding. And now we actually have awful prices for both wool and for lambs. So no one could have ever anticipated this. There's a bit of talk up lately that farmers are doing really well, but most of us haven't really recovered from the drought. So it's been a really difficult time. And the worst of the lot is actually the input costs and the labour costs. Like most businesses, a lot of industries doing it really tough at the moment. So, yeah, we're doing everything right. Really happy with the sheep that we've got, the wool that we're growing. They're an easy care sheep that the shearers like to shear because they don't have the wrinkles all over them. And we have a very natural system. We're regenerative farmers, so it's a very natural system. We don't have to give them a lot of chemicals for drenching, that sort of thing. And we've got lots of shrubs and that they actually browse on. We don't really need many herbicides, if any. So I'm very happy with how all that's going, but it's still really difficult to make money, and most farms will actually have another income or another side hustle. Like, this was intended just to be a side hustle because of the variability of farm income. It's highly variable. You might get one payment for your wool each year and maybe one for your lambs, and then there's the bills coming all the rest of the year. So most of us have a husband or a wife who works in town or another business. I wasn't surprised when I had to do that. And I do know that the costs of ag chemicals and all these other things are just going up, and they never really come down. But it is pretty tough for farmers and across the board, and especially at the moment for wool growers because of the prices that we have.
Yeah, I mean, it is tough being in that industry, and it's interesting though that I was lucky enough to travel last year, and I was in Scotland, and we happened to visit a place or two where they were talking about their wool, and that, not even knowing that we were Australian, they said, "Look, ours is okay, but Australian is so much better," and they were explaining why, and then they found out we were Australian, so it was even more interesting. And I think that's one of the things is that. You've built a business now built on all of those, being locally based, using everything Australian as much as you possibly can. And I wonder if that's you saying it's a point of difference in the market. Is it as well respected in the market as perhaps it used to be? Because those Australian-made campaigns don't seem to be as obvious as they used to be maybe, 15, 20 years ago.
Yes, and even in my short time, Sleepy Merino has been going for about 5 years now. There's been a lot of anti-import sentiment, especially anti-China sentiment, so that's sort of added to it, and I never even anticipated it'd be that strong. It's always only a sector of the market who really want and can pay for Australian-made, but they love it. They really do. And when they find that there's an option that is Australian-made, they will happily pay for it. And that sector of the market is also where my price point is. It's not luxury. It's not top-end luxury. And it's not competing with the cheap imports. I just can't do that with the mass-produced market. It's that next level down from luxury. It's sort of quality. And I've had to concentrate on making a really quality product so that it's sitting there in that little niche. I had a really good mentor help me with that. He was in Silicon Valley, living here on a very large cattle farm here in 𝗰𝗲𝗏𝗏. He said, just don't try to compete. Don't discount. Don't get involved in the race to the bottom, especially as, times get tough. Like at the moment, the economy is a little bit difficult. But, hey, the people that buy my product are still doing well. They're still going on the overseas trips where they want to come in and buy some Sleepy Merino so they can travel in it. And it's actually been growing. So you've got to be brave to do it, but it's actually worthwhile. Setting up your niche, getting a point of difference, and working on the quality that you require to be in that little niche.
It's a really important point, I think, for a lot of businesses out there, because we do tend to think about, well, it's either got to be high-end and expensive, or, as you say, the race to the bottom, which is a very dangerous place to be in, because it's, first of all, you're competing constantly on price, so you're constantly dropping. And secondly, you're just producing more and more for less and less gain. And when you walk in and you've got to sell 1,000 of something as opposed to selling 100 of something, it's a hell of a lot harder, isn't it?
It is, yeah. And I have actually put my prices up. I mean, obviously my production has gone up. The factory where I make my products, they've had power price increases. The labour is what they say is really put their prices up. So I've put my price up, but it hasn't actually affected my sales. In fact, my sales are getting stronger each year. But I do realise that by making more MOQ, they call it in fashion, if I can make more per order, it will bring my prices down a little bit, my costs down. So I'm actually moving to go more into the wholesale, so I can actually make larger quantities as well. So I do that as well as the online. But getting into the little mum and dad retail stores around the country that sell a higher quality sort of product, along with the lovely wool jumpers and things that are so scarce these days to find. So sort of moving into that as well. Early days, but so far so good. I think I have to do that as a manufacturer, because it's not just like buying a product from someone and then selling it on. It's not easy, and sometimes there are delays in production. I actually share a factory that also makes products for R.M. Williams and Country Road, and if they need something in a hurry, yeah, of course I'm going to get pushed down the list. That's just reality as a small business. So I've got to work with that. I've been thinking last week or so about how do I get around that, and I've sort of going to be moving a little bit more into indent order, so people actually order ahead, so I can actually know what my numbers are, so I can order well ahead. I've had to be very flexible, especially as a small business competing in the manufacturing space, and with the costs. I've also moved to having a 3PL to actually distribute my products, and I don't want too much stock in the warehouse because I'm paying for that on a monthly basis as well. So it's really tricky being a manufacturer and actually distributing the goods. But hey, I'm learning all the time, and I'm getting a lot of help as well. So, both you and I have a lot of help from Abundance Global with our coaching, and I can get, I have a bit of a mastermind every now and then with people in our group that have been so helpful as other business owners. Just bouncing ideas has been so helpful, especially living in a remote regional area. I'm here at the moment on my farm, I'm about 30 k's out of town. I have to cross a creek, four-wheel drive only. I often get flooded in and out. It's thank God for satellite, so I can still talk to you in the middle of nowhere. How good is that? But yeah, you have to be very
so wonderful,
flexible.
isn't it? It's so wonderful, Julie, because, it works both ways because, I'm making the move out of Sydney, as I think I've told our listeners before, so not quite as far afield as you. I'm still not, but the flexibility that you can have to do that these days is huge because, look, I know a fraction about this space compared to what you've learnt in the last few years, but my grandparents, when they came to Australia with absolutely nothing, ended up setting up a clothing factory, and my grandfather spent most of his time on the road selling to small locations that would on-sell their clothing, and they were very successful until they retired. And so I sort of got a bit of an understanding of the process that you're going through. In those days, they didn't have the technology, and the thing is that where it was, I can imagine very, very lonely being on a farm some time ago. Now you can get that virtual support. It's not quite the same as being in person, but at least it's some support that is there. And expanding your networks, because I think the important thing is as well that you've now transitioning, aren't you? I mean, it's been, you've gone from farm to online, but now it's starting to transition further, isn't it? Because correct me if I'm wrong, but you had a shop that was basically connected to the township, and it's that you're moving on from there, aren't you?
That's right. And it was really successful little shop. So it's actually a really good stage for the business. So it was a retail store. It was also my warehouse. So I had a whole heap of old offices behind, which were just filled with boxes of Sleepy Merino. But I was able to sit there, do my work and do my sales calls. But people came in the front door and bought products while I was doing my work, which is good. It was distracting, but it was good. If they're going to be paying often cash, tourists, it was very helpful, and it was well and truly paying for the costs of rent and all the other expenses. But I was finding that I was tied there. I couldn't really get away for this next stage of the business, which is getting out to these retail stores and, country department stores and hopefully bigger department stores eventually. I have to be on the road going forward. Yes, you can do a lot over the computer and the phone, but there's nothing better than meeting people in person. And with my product, it's feeling the product because it's such a soft product that it's very tactile. And that's another reason I have to get into more stores too, because it just sells so much better if people actually can feel and touch the product rather than just hear about it online and make the big leap themselves. So I've got to be on the road a lot more, and this has given me a little bit of freedom. It's not a lot of freedom because of the sheep as well. I've still got to do that. My brother does help; he looks after them, so I can get away. But yeah, that's the next stage. The store was very successful, and also getting that feedback on the products, so you can actually fine-tune your products. I've narrowed down to the range the happiest with, which reduces my numbers, my SKU numbers for my warehouse, much easier and cheaper. So, yeah, it's been part of the process. You might think, well, that's, like 3 different businesses that I've done so far. And in reality, it is. But it's like stepping stones in the process. And without doing any of those foundation sort of stages of the business, I don't think I'd be ready to do this next, where I'm ramping up into more the wholesale side of things. There's another side of things as well, which has been the export. I actually had an Austrade grant for a couple of years up until recently, and I was exporting just through the online store. Just because of the cost, it was through, a difficult time with container shipping being so expensive. But it really did open up my markets all over the world. I actually now have set up a separate website for the Northern Hemisphere so I can have the opposing seasons products featured there, and also in US dollars and Canadian dollars. They're my two biggest ones I was concentrating on. But I do sell them all over the world, Scandinavia, Finland loves them in particular, through Asia, because they are so cooling for the Asian population as well. So there's been quite a few different steps to get where I am. And now is another big step that I'm going to have to take. But I feel confident and ready to, in my production, I've got the best factory, I think, in Australia. The wool mill is able to ramp up production to produce the actual fabric. So I'm ready to get to that next step of actually being in conversations with some big exporters. If one of those comes off even, it would just be huge, exponential increase in growth. So I'll just keep trying, and eventually I'm hoping I get one of those big deals. At the moment, there's some influencers in South Korea wearing Sleepy Merinos, so their influencers don't have hundreds of thousands of followers, they have millions. So I just need one of these little things to happen. But, yeah, they love Australian-made, and Australian-made is a thing overseas. Another thing overseas is that they appreciate merino products even more than Australians. Australians are not that educated to merino, which is crazy because we produce the best in the world. So I've actually also, as part of the business, done a lot of educating, so a lot of blogs, a lot of articles in magazines, things like that, just educating the public about the properties of merino and that it does help you sleep, that it is thermoregulating. In Australia, a lot of particularly women think it's itchy because of the school jumpers they used to wear. So there's been that aspect of it as well. So it's been a busy time, and I can't do any of it that well because I'm too stretched.
It's quite amazing because as well as the transitions that you've been going on and I think you can't underestimate how difficult it is to learn something new. It's all very well, and we all have these ideas. I think most business leaders have these ideas, and often it's within a space that they're, I wouldn't say completely comfortable with, but there's a degree of comfort in there. But the interesting thing for you is that just initially starting, as you said earlier on, having to design clothing, that is a whole different skill. It's one thing to have the idea and go, well, I've got the wool, I've got a bit of an idea how the wool and that part works. But then to go, I've got to design clothing, and that's something that's got to be ongoing, right? Because it's not, you can't just say, well, we've designed it once and we're going to keep the same style for the next whatever years, because things change, don't they? So I imagine that that part of the business, you have to keep adapting and innovating, that's just the basic part.
I've had to move out of my comfort zone constantly. And maybe I first did that with the farm. You have to. You never know what's happening tomorrow. You're never comfortable in farming. I mean, I'd love to be, and I'm sort of, good at researching things and getting them all set out and right before you go ahead and do things. But you can't afford to do that sometimes in business. You just have to take the leap. You do a certain amount of research. You have to, look at what your gut's telling you as well. You have to have a passion for what you're wanting to do, because that will lead you and take you there. But sometimes you just have to take that leap of faith. I mean, I've, had the support of people around me as well. But I just have to, now I've got another thing I've got to learn. I've got to set up a new B2B platform for my new wholesale customers. So it's another thing to learn. You're just always stepping out of your comfort zone to do something new. And sometimes you can't just go out and pay someone to do it. With the costs in all businesses at the moment, you have to do some of these things yourself. I'm trying to find out more and more as I go along. But, you've got to be careful.
Well, that's it. And it's interesting how the little businesses develop off the side of these things. And I know that we spoke a few episodes ago on Biz Bites to Susan Loft, who's known as the laundry lady, who basically turned people's personal laundries into an Uber-style service. And so people from their homes are doing laundry for other people. But the interesting thing about that discussion was her business now is as much about the technology that is sitting behind that to make that work as it is about the front-facing business. And I can see that there's things going on there, because the technology that you need just to manage the warehouse, to manage as you're starting to get orders both online and from shops that you're going out to, and particularly if you're starting to sell to retailers, that complexity of that is almost a business on its own as well.
Absolutely. I could sit here in my office and just run that side of the business. But I've tried to keep it as simple as I can. And the whole process is towards automation. There's only one of me. And that's why I've gone to the 3PL as well. I was picking and packing all my own orders, but it just got too much. I've got to spend my valuable time on actually growing the business, not working in the business. So everything integrates. I've got the two websites, Northern and Southern Hemisphere, all working so that the inventory is right, and also integrating into the 3PL so that they can keep the stock right. And I'll be setting up this new B2B platform so that all integrates, and there'll be also indent orders before time as well. So, yeah, it's all getting a bit complex, and there's still only one of me, really. But when you think about it, I'm growing a team. It's just that they're external people. Like, there's a fabulous business at the 3PL. The family there have been doing this for a long time, specialise in the fashion industry, and 𝗬𝗲𝗲𝗲 and the big guys in distribution. The factory, same thing, fantastic. So I've got a team around me. I just don't actually employ them. So it's a little bit different, but yeah, it's
not
still
as different
a team.
as you think. Not as different as you might think. I think there are a lot of businesses out there that do exactly the same thing. I know when I founded my business that we initially focused a lot on branding and general marketing. And I never employed a graphic designer. I had a close association and I still do, with a graphic design agency that I've worked with for now. I think it's getting close to 25 years that we've worked together. And it's building those relationships which are vital to keeping businesses running. So I'm interested because you said you had a few trials and fails with various businesses that couldn't keep up with what you needed. So how do you find them, and how do you build those relationships, and that getting in and getting out, all of that stuff is difficult to navigate within itself.
It is. And there's a lot of trial and error. How I've managed to get somehow, as a very small business, into the same factory as R.M. Williams and Country Road here in Australia. And they're fantastic, the job they do. I think they realise the business is growing slowly, but growing. But also I make sure that I pay on time. It's not easy sometimes, especially if, I've just had an order received from winter stock, and it's spring now. I just have to suck it up sometimes because I am the smaller business. I have to just look at other ways that I can manage my stock, and partly that's with the Northern Hemisphere sort of business side of things as well, so that I can have less sort of variability in season. So yeah, it's there's just been so many So many complexities to get around, but that's basically where I've been.
Yeah, and I think that it's growing constantly, which is easy to say for people that they want to scale the business, but actually doing it sometimes is incredibly difficult, and you do need those relationships to be able to manage that process, don't you? Because if tomorrow you got a big order in, you've got now the various suppliers and factories and things that's possible to fulfill that.
It is, and it would be very easy to actually just do that all from a distance remotely, but I've made the effort to actually get down there to Melbourne on a fairly regular basis, talk to the people both in the wool mill who are making the fabric and also at the factory and the 3PL. So they're all fairly close together. It works really well for me. But, yeah, it's building that relationship over time. And if I'm down there for another reason, I just drop in and say hello and have lunch with them or whatever because, they're my team now. And I think that's partly why they're giving me the effort as a small business is because I'm making the effort as well. And I have that relationship with them. But you've got to be flexible for them as well. I mean, they've got a lot to do. I try and not to make things difficult. I keep my products simple. In Australia, we just don't have, with the costs, we just can't make things fancy. We keep them simple, and that suits my products anyway. With the merino product, you don't want zips and buttons and things like that when you're sleeping anyway. You want it comfy. So simple, high quality, it's the way to go with my team. It's probably why it's been successful so far. They just don't make mistakes. I've had the not so good factories and constant mistakes. Me having to repair things or send them back for repair. It's been worth the effort. I probably pay a bit more and I pay a bit more in travel to keep these relationships happening. It's been worth it in the long run. I have a high-quality product and I can play. It goes right back to the beginning. I can play in that space where I don't have to join the race to the bottom. I can have that high-quality, high-end product that people are happy to pay for. It's unique and it's a little niche, and it's across it's across wellness, it's across travel, it's across so many aspects of people's lives that it's got to work.
So I wanted to just, and we've got to wrap things up soon, but I just wanted to ask you about the area that you're touching on there and you touched on earlier on around the idea of educating the market, because it's all very well to kind of say, okay, well, this is where we're going to sit in the quality space, but you have to educate the market that that's what you are doing. And you also have to educate the market, as you say, to understand the benefits of merino wool, because even, for example, myself sort of going, okay, is this a winter product or is this, an all year round product? So how do you go about doing that, and what are you adding to the story that you're sharing on a consistent basis to be able to educate the market?
It's so tempting when you have a product like merino that has it's like a list of features, just to list the features. It does this, it does that. But that's not really great for selling a product. We get that all the time. Hey, it didn't work for Apple either. But all their competitors, that's what they did. Apple made it more about someone's lifestyle and how they were leading their life. So I try and actually bring it back to how this will make people's lives better. And bring the value of the merino in that way. Say there's a middle-aged lady that's having trouble sleeping because they're hot and cold. You sort of market around that factor that, hey, if you get a better night's sleep, you're going to be better at work, you're going to have better relationships, and hey, your life's going to be much better if you're getting that sleep. So sort of concentrating on that with the marketing side of things, and then you have to have a little bit of education piece in there as well. Hey, merino is thermoregulating. It does this. Yes, our merino is actually pre-shrunk, so it won't shrink like a lot of the ones, and we actually make it long, and we actually have proper Australian sizes, and you just put a little bit of that in there, so you're not educating them on a big list of things. I think I used to do that quite a lot. Does this, and this. And, people probably switched off after the first couple or forgot everything. But you just sort of, have a bit of an angle every time I do a post or something like that, or an article. This is something that's really great about our product that can make your life better. So that's sort of what I've been concentrating on. And there's also the proof with the research. You can some people like to go back and actually look at the research, so I've got even those aspects in the website that if you're that way inclined, you can actually go and look at the papers if you want to, and that's the proof. So it's not, because there's a lot of greenwashing out there and that sort of thing. So, but basically, the authenticity of a brand and the story behind this sort of product, I really think that's why it's done as well as it has. People like not buying from a multinational with imported mass-produced products. And I think the timing just has worked really beautifully for Sleepy Merino. I noticed that even in �奧𝗲𝗿𝗆, people would come in, tourists come from Sydney and say, oh, isn't this wonderful? We don't have to go to the chain stores. You've got all these little independent stores in the town. And I think that if I can get into those stores around Australia too, that will be really good for my brand. It's funny, people have really switched around. The people that have the means and spending money, especially, they're in that space. They want something different. They want something unique. They want something that's quality and something that works to make their life better. That's what they're looking for. Things have changed, and I think COVID's had a fair bit to do with that. The people are after comfort, luxury, affordable luxury. It's been a big change, and there's a lot of opportunities, and it's been great for, I actually was on the Buy from the Bush platform for a while, so that was really good. People started to actually look outside the big multinationals, and now people are aware that there are other options out there, small manufacturers, small businesses in regional areas. They love it. They love it. My export customers love it as well. That's what's so attractive to my South Korean partnership I'm working with. They love that as well. So big is not always better.
No, that's true, and again, it's still talking to the quality. And I think what's really interesting about what you're doing as well is you're building brand advocates and brand ambassadors as you're going along the way, particularly through those areas. And you're right, there's people are looking for something different, and in many respects, it's easier than ever to look for something different because, yes, you can go into the shopping centre. Yes, you can see the big manufacturers online, but it is often often people are trying to look outside of that because, as you say, they want something different and they want the quality. And it's a terrific niche to be in. Look, we could talk for so much longer because there are so many things to unpack about your business, but thank you for giving us such a great insight. I just wanted to wrap things up in a way of saying, look, people wanting to learn from your experiences and what you're doing, you're keeping people updated, you're sharing on podcasts like this, but you're also regularly, as you say, writing articles and things. And I guess the best thing to do is to say to people, follow the links in the show notes, because you'll want to follow what Julie's doing, because there's a lot to learn. I think, obviously we want people to go out there and buy the product. And if you know anyone who wants to buy lots of the product, even better. But also to learn from the processes you're going through, because there's so much for businesses at all stages of growth to understand and learn from.
Absolutely. If I can do it, anyone can do it. But it just takes a bit of grit and determination. And it's been a fun journey, really. Hard but fun.
Now, I always like to wrap up with a question that I ask people, and it's a little bit different for you, because normally I say to people, what's the aha moment they have when they're working with you? But I'm going to twist that a little bit. So what's the aha moment, what's the feedback you get from people who are using your products? Because clearly you're still in business after a few years and it's growing, so the feedback must be great, and you must enjoy getting that feedback.
Oh, that is the best part of being in this business, is that people, once they try the product, they actually ring me and email me, go, oh my God, this is magic. It's so soft and luxurious, and I'm sleeping better, and I want more, and I'm telling all my friends about it, and I'm buying it for all of my relatives for their birthdays. And the feedback is fabulous. And that's, the word of mouth is the best marketing in the world, of course, and they come back and buy more. There's a lady in France that's had 23 orders of Sleepy Merino. Like, that's a lot of pajamas. But it's most of my customers are loyal, and they come back and back and back. And that tells the story for me that I'm on a winner. It also, they're very upfront with which products they like, and also offering suggestions of new products. So, that's been the best aspect of this whole thing, is the feedback, the love of the products, and it's good for the whole wool industry, even if it's not just my Sleepy Merino, that people are actually learning about wool and they're wearing wool again. Then they're going to go and buy some wool jumpers, and they're going to buy some wool socks, and, it's good for the whole industry, for the Australian wool industry. So, that's been the aha moment for me, is that, hey, this is actually really working and people love it. So it's worth all the hard effort that I put in every day of the week.
Well, you'll be commended for the journey that you've been on, and I thank you so much for being generous in sharing all of it, and so much more. And I know that we're going to catch up very soon, but I'm looking forward to watching the journey and having you back again as a guest in the future, as we see the business continue to grow. As I mentioned to everyone, we will have all the details in the show notes of how people can get in contact, how people can purchase from you, whether they're in the southern or the northern hemisphere. We'll have those links for you to be able to get a hold of Julie. So thank you so much for being an amazing guest on the program.
Thank you so much. I really enjoyed it.
And to everyone listening, of course, don't forget to stay tuned for the next episode of Biz Bites. Don't forget to hit subscribe, and we look forward to your company then. Hey, thanks for listening to Biz Bites. We hope you enjoyed the program. Don't forget to hit subscribe so you never miss an episode. Biz Bites is proudly brought to you by Podcasts Done For You, the service where we will deliver a podcast for you and expose your brilliance to the world. Contact us today for more information. Details in the show notes. We look forward to your company next time on Biz Bites.